You know how quickly we adapt to a strange smell in a house? You walk into a place, maybe there's a persistent dampness in the basement
Or
or
maybe someone cooked with, like, heavy garlic 2 days ago.
right, exactly. And in that first minute, it is absolutely all you can smell. I mean, it is completely overwhelming, but give it an hour.
You totally stop noticing it. You just live in it.
Yeah, you adapt, and there is a real scientific reason for that, right?
Absolutely. The mechanism behind that is called sensory adaptation
Huh.
because our brains are, they're incredibly efficient calorie-saving machines.
They want to be lazy, basically.
Well, yeah, sort of. Constant, unchanging stimuli like a background scent or even the hum of a refrigerator,
Yeah.
those are actively filtered out by our nervous system.
Okay, so the brain just mutes it.
Exactly. The brain essentially mutes that incoming data so it can keep its processing power available for new, potentially threatening information. So the smell is still there, obviously, but your perception of it has been entirely deactivated.
Right. You are just completely oblivious to it. But then a friend walks through your front door, sniffs the air, and immediately goes, "Whoa, what is that?"
And suddenly the illusion shatters.
Yes. You are acutely aware of the environment you have been sitting in this whole time.
Because it takes an external perspective to, bypass your brain's filtering system and make you conscious of your own baseline reality.
And that phenomena, that exact shift of perspective, is what we are exploring today on this deep dive, but with much, much higher stakes than last night's dinner.
Significantly higher stakes, yes.
We are looking at that lingering, heavy feeling of being stuck in a romantic relationship, because it is incredibly common for couples to know things feel generally off, or to feel this pervasive sense of exhaustion with their partner, but they struggle to pinpoint what actually needs to change.
Right, they're just living in the smell, to
Mhm.
use your analogy.
Yeah. Exactly. They are enduring the environment without evaluating it. Mostly because they are too busy, managing schedules, paying bills, keeping the household running. They don't have the bandwidth to step back and play the role of the friend walking through the door.
Yeah, the cognitive load of daily life forces couples into that sensory adaptation. You just stop analyzing the dynamic
Yeah.
because you simply have to survive the day.
Which brings us to the source material for today's deep dive. We are looking at a really compelling piece from Psychology Today. It's by couples therapist Dr. Asael Romanelli and relationship coach Gallet Romanelli.
It's a fantastic article.
It really is. And our mission today is to uncover a single, powerful, and honestly highly uncomfortable question they use in their practice, because it acts as a total shortcut to evaluating your partnership and finding the leverage to actually change it.
It's quite a wake-up call of a question.
Oh, it really is. Okay, let's unpack this. Before we hit the question itself, we have to establish why this question works. And to do that, the authors focus heavily on the environment couples create. Not the physical house itself, but the space between the partners.
Right, the authors draw a really sharp distinction between a physical household and a psychological environment. When there are children involved, the physical house is totally secondary.
How so?
Well, children do not just observe two adults coexisting. They physically and emotionally grow up inside the relational space between those two people.
I really like that. I tend to picture that relational space as like an invisible weather system inside the home.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, because kids might not be able to read the emotional barometer on the wall, but they absolutely feel the humidity of unresolved conflict.
Oh, they definitely do.
They feel the sudden chill when one partner gives the other the silent treatment. But they also feel the warmth of sudden affection or, a shared joke. They are walking through this specific climate every single day.
And that climate serves as their very first classroom. The psychological term the authors use here is implicit relational knowledge.
Implicit relational knowledge.
Right?
Okay.
And the underlying mechanism is crucial here. Children absorb this knowledge passively. Their nervous systems are essentially Wi-Fi receivers calibrating to the parent's baseline frequencies.
Wow, just constantly downloading the data.
Exactly. They are
Yeah.
constantly monitoring their environment to figure out what love looks like, how power is negotiated, and what emotional distance feels like.
So it completely overrides that old parenting fallback of do as I say, not as I do.
It exposes the flaw in that logic
Yeah.
entirely, yeah? Children are brilliant observers, but they are terrible interpreters.
Right.
When there is a gap between a parent's stated values and their actual behavior, children's brains prioritize the behavior every time.
Yeah.
It is literally a survival mechanism.
Because they need to know what's real.
Exactly. They need to understand how the world actually works, not how you tell them it works. If you tell a child that communication is important, but they watch you roll your eyes at your partner every night and just leave the room.
The eye roll becomes the truth.
Yes, the eye roll is encoded as normal, acceptable relationship behavior.
So your kids are recording your actions, not your lectures.
What's fascinating here is how this passive absorption creates intergenerational relational scripts. Because children internalize this emotional weather as their baseline for reality, it becomes the default expectation they carry right into adulthood.
It sets their normal.
Exactly. Their nervous systems are literally wired to seek out or recreate the climate they grew up in, because the brain conflates familiar with safe.
So for everyone listening, take a second and think about the relationship modeled by the adults who raised you. Are you simply replicating the patterns you witnessed growing up? Because the authors point out a really sneaky trick of human psychology here.
The overcorrection trap.
Yes. Sometimes we think we are breaking the cycle, right? We try to rebel against the toxic traits we grew up with, and we overcorrect. Say you grew up in a house with explosive, loud fighting.
Which is terrifying for a kid.
Totally. So you vow to never raise your voice, which sounds good in theory, but it results in you bottling everything up, avoiding conflict entirely, and just being emotionally unavailable to your partner.
And that overcorrection is a classic trap. You think you are writing a completely new script, but you are really just reading the old one in reverse.
Oh, that is such a good point.
The mechanism of dysfunction is still dictating your behavior. If your parents' issue was a lack of emotional regulation and your response is a total suppression of emotion, the unresolved tension is still the core variable in your relationship.
You haven't escaped the script at all.
No, you've just flipped the polarity.
Wow. Okay, because children are constantly internalizing this emotional weather, the Romanellis use this exact phenomenon to create urgency for couples who feel stuck. Here's where it gets really interesting.
The big question.
The big question. If you are feeling stuck, if you are unsure how much work your relationship actually needs, they invite you to ask yourself this one simple question. Would you wish your relationship on your kids?
It just bypasses all your standard defensive rationalizations, doesn't it?
It totally takes your breath away. Because when we evaluate our own lives, we make excuses, we rationalize our compromises, but this question forces a massive perspective shift.
It removes the ego from it.
Right. It isn't just about gaining clarity, it is about leverage. It forces a couple to zoom all the way out past the local friction of, whose turn it is to empty the dishwasher and see the macro stakes.
Neurologically, it forces you out of your amygdala where you are just reacting to daily stress and into your prefrontal cortex.
Explain that a bit more.
Well, when you're arguing about household chores, the stakes feel low, even if the frustration is high. But when you apply the framework of, would I want my child to experience this exact dynamic with their future partner, you become ruthlessly objective.
The stakes become astronomical.
Exactly. You can't lie to yourself anymore.
Let's explore the answers to this question, starting with the most painful one, the no way response. You look at your partnership, you look at your kids, and you think, absolutely not. I would be heartbroken if my child ended up in a relationship that feels like mine.
The authors stress that if you hit that realization, the intense cognitive dissonance and discomfort you feel is the exact leverage you need.
It's supposed to hurt.
Yes. It is the catalyst to change things now, not next year, not when the kids finally go off to college. You have to use that pain as fuel to initiate structural change in the relationship immediately.
Okay, wait, I have to stop right there. Because if I look at my relationship and I realize it is a terrible model for my kids, isn't the damage already done?
That's a very common fear.
I mean, their nervous systems have already absorbed the baseline, like you said. That feels completely paralyzing, not motivating. It just feels like a massive parental failure.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the authors argued that this realization is not a failure, but an inflection point. Yes, the children have absorbed the current baseline, but the profound lesson hidden in a no answer is about what you model next.
Okay, so it's not too late.
Not at all. Changing the relationship improves life for you, obviously, but the secondary benefit is what it teaches your children about human connection. It teaches them that relationships are not fixed, immutable things.
Right, they aren't just trapped that you get stuck in once you sign a marriage license.
Exactly. By taking action, you show them that a dynamic can evolve. The authors use this great concept that couples can actually remarry the same partner by intentionally transforming their current dynamic.
I love that idea of remarrying the same person.
It's powerful, because modeling perfection is actually detrimental to children. It builds emotional fragility. When they inevitably face conflict in their own adult relationships, if they've never seen it modeled, they won't know what to do.
They'll just panic.
Exactly. But when kids witness their parents actively doing the work, when they see the messy, honest effort of rebuilding a broken connection and modeling repair, they internalize a far more resilient script.
They learn that when things get bad, you have the agency to fix it.
Precisely. The ability to repair after a rupture is arguably the single most important relational skill a human being can possess.
Yeah.
If your no answer pushes you to develop and model that skill, you are giving your children a massive psychological advantage.
So you aren't just saving your relationship. You are giving them a master class in emotional repair. You are letting them see the tools in action.
Yes, you are literally equipping them for their future.
Okay, so that covers the clear no. But realistically, if you ask most couples if they would wish their relationship on their kids, the answer isn't a black and white yes or no.
Rarely is it that simple.
We exist in the messy middle. Most people probably land in the I'm not sure or it depends category.
Because human connections are deeply complex. Some parts of a relationship might feel deeply meaningful, secure, and supportive, while other parts feel chronically disappointing, volatile, or just exhausting.
So what does this all mean for the folks living in the gray area? The authors provide some really actionable mechanics here, which I appreciate.
They do, yeah.
They suggest sitting down with your partner and making 2 specific lists. First, what exact parts of this relationship would you happily see your kids replicate? Second, which parts do you desperately hope they avoid?
I love this exercise because it forces specificity. General dissatisfaction is impossible to fix.
Right.
You can't fix a vague feeling of things feel off,
Yeah.
but you can absolutely fix, we do not know how to de-escalate arguments about money.
It is almost like curating a museum exhibit for your family's future.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, but you aren't just putting artifacts behind glass. You are actively programming the psychological inheritance of your kids. You are the curator deciding what gets reinforced.
I see what you mean.
Like, do you put the artifact of how we fiercely support each other's career changes on a pedestal? Absolutely, that goes on the replicate list.
For sure.
But what about the artifact of how we give each other the silent treatment for 3 days after a disagreement? You have to look at that and realize, I need to dismantle this. I do not want my kids carrying this into their adult lives.
Exactly. And that avoid list points a giant neon arrow exactly to where your energy and potentially your couples therapy needs to go.
Yeah.
I like that framing a lot because it highlights intentionality. And this brings us to a central concept in the text, relational integrity.
Relational integrity.
Yeah, and integrity here isn't just about moral honesty. Think of it like structural integrity in engineering. The authors define relational integrity as the alignment between the relationship you are currently living and the relationship you actually want to pass on to the next generation.
So it's the gap between the daily reality and the desired legacy.
Yes, beautifully put. When there is a large gap between those two things, your relationship lacks structural integrity. It is full of internal friction, cognitive dissonance, and stress.
And like any bad structure, it will eventually collapse under pressure.
Right. But when you actively work to close that gap by dismantling the items on your avoid list, you achieve relational integrity. The structure becomes sound.
That makes so much sense.
This raises an important question about the ultimate purpose of partnership. The authors drop a standout quote here that totally reorients how we view long-term commitment.
Let's hear it.
They state that the goal of a relationship is not simply to endure it. The goal is to feel free together.
Feel free together. Wow, that phrasing is incredible because when you feel stuck in the messy middle, a relationship feels like the exact opposite of freedom.
It feels incredibly restrictive.
Right, it feels like a cage of obligations and compromises that just slowly whittle down your individual identity over the years.
And that feeling of being caged is exactly what they mean by the state of enduring. It happens when a relationship lacks psychological safety.
You're just bracing for impact all the time.
Exactly. But when partners achieve relational integrity, when they actively curate their dynamic to eliminate those toxic behaviors and reinforce supportive ones, they create deep psychological safety. You no longer have to wear a mask or walk on eggshells.
And that is what freedom in a relationship actually means.
Yes. It stops being a source of exhaustion and becomes a source of strength. It becomes a secure base from which both partners can independently navigate the world.
And when you achieve that state of feeling free together, that becomes your relational legacy. The authors refer to it as your relational wealth.
Relational wealth, yeah.
That's like you are passing down a fortune, But instead of real estate or stock portfolios, you are passing down a functional, liberating model of human connection.
which is arguably way more valuable.
Huh.
It is the foundation upon which your children will build their entire emotional lives.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, let's just distill the core mechanics for everyone listening. Whether your motivation to fix a stuck relationship comes from a purely internal desire to just be happier, or if it is triggered by the jarring realization that your kids' nervous systems are actively calibrating to your bad habits.
The source of the motivation doesn't really matter. Both work.
Exactly. What matters is that you find the leverage to initiate the work.
And the authors strongly encourage making this question a recurring practice, not just a one-time thought experiment. Revisit it, ask it once a year on your anniversary, or, ask it whenever the weather in the house starts feeling chronically humid and tense.
Let your children witness the effort. Let them see the awkward conversations, the proactive apologies, the repair after a conflict, and the shared humor that gets you both through the messy parts.
Because your children are writing their future scripts right now,
Yeah.
based on your current behavior.
Yeah.
Which actually leaves us with a final thought to mull over, building on this whole idea of leverage and motivation.
Oh, lay it on us.
Well, we talked about how hard it is to change a dynamic just for ourselves. We often settle for less because, deep down, we might struggle with our own self-worth. We think we can tolerate the damp basement.
Right. Going back to the start, we just adapt to the smell. We figure it's fine.
Exactly. But the psychological trick of this question wishing it on your kids is that it uses a proxy to bypass our lack of self-worth.
Oh, that is profound.
Right. We will aggressively demand a standard of love and respect for our children that we would never dare demand for ourselves.
Yeah.
But here's the paradox. You cannot give your children a healthy relational environment without actually living in it yourself.
You can't fake it.
You can't fake it.
Yeah.
By using your children as the proxy motivation to fix the climate of your home, you're accidentally forced into treating yourself better.
Wow.
You end up realizing that you actually deserve that healthy, free love all along. It is basically a backdoor to healing your own self-worth, disguised as parenting.
You rebuild the house for them, but you get to live in it too. You cannot outrun the bad weather, but you have complete agency over the climate you create today. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Carry this powerful, uncomfortable question into your own relational space this week. Take a deep breath, really smell the air in your own home, and ask yourself what kind of weather you are actually creating.